Hello, class. Welcome to this course, a combination of a study in the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. So we will begin with an introduction to the book of Daniel in this lecture. The book of Daniel is placed after the prophet Ezekiel in English Bibles, as well as the Septuagint and the Vulgate. However, the prophecy of Daniel is in a different place in the Hebrew scripture, which is divided into three portions: the law, the prophets, and the writings. Thus, the book of Daniel is not included among the prophets, nor is the man Daniel referred to in his book as a prophet. Also, God did not deliver a message through Daniel publicly to the nation Israel. Yet, Jesus called Daniel a prophet in Matthew 24:15. Certainly he was God's messenger with God's message to reveal truths God had disclosed to him. Let's look at the personal life of the prophet Daniel. This book bears the simple title Daniel primarily because it follows a custom of affixing the name of the author to the book he wrote. From the testimony of his contemporaries, he was known for his righteousness. We see that in Ezekiel 14, and his wisdom, Ezekiel 28. Little is known of Daniel's family background. Daniel was born into the royal family and was of noble birth. He physically was attractive and mentally sharp. He lived at least until the third year of Cyrus, around 536 BC. Therefore, he must have been a young man when he was taken captive by Nebuchadnezzar in 605 BC. If he was 16 when captured, he must have been 85 in Cyrus's third year. The literary form of this book, the prophecy of Daniel, is the first great book of apocalyptic literature in the Bible. The word apocalypsis means an unveiling, a disclosing, or a revelation from God. Apocalyptic literature in the Bible has several characteristics. In apocalyptic literature, a person who received God's truths in visions recorded what he saw. Apocalyptic literature makes extensive use of symbols or signs. Such literature normally gives revelation concerning God's program for the future of his people Israel. Prose was usually employed in apocalyptic literature rather than poetry, which was the norm for prophecy. In interpreting visions, symbols, and signs in apocalyptic literature, one is seldom left to his own ingenuity to discover the truth. In most instances, an examination of the context or a comparison with a parallel biblical passage provides the scripture's own interpretation of the visions or the symbols. Apocalyptic literature then demands a careful comparison of scripture with scripture. Languages that the book of Daniel was written in. The book of Daniel is unusual that it was written in two languages, Hebrew and Aramaic. That was the lingua franca of Daniel's day. Though the book of Daniel is a single literary work, it has two major emphases: God's program for the Gentiles and the effect and influence of the Gentiles on Israel. Therefore, it was fitting that the prophecy concerning the Gentiles be in their language, Aramaic, and it was fitting that the portions concerning the effect and influence of the Gentiles on the Jews be in their language, that is, Hebrew. The date of the writing of this book and authorship, according to the contents of the book of Daniel itself, it was written in the 6th century BC by Daniel, who lived during its events. Daniel is referred to many times as a recipient of God's revelation. Daniel took part in many of the historical events recorded in the book. The Lord himself attributed the authorship of the book to Daniel. Daniel's familiarity with the individuals spoken of in the book and with the historical events and customs mentioned in the book necessitates a 6th century date for the book. what is the historical background. Ancient Babylon was founded by Nimrod 2,300 years before Christ. Nineveh was destroyed by the collation of kings, Xerxes the Mede, Nabopolassar of Babylon, and the king of the Scythians. Nabopolassar received the area west and south of the Euphrates. Thus, the Neo-Babylonian Empire was born. Nebuchadnezzar, son of Nabopolassar, engaged Pharaoh Necho of Egypt at the famous Battle of Carchemish. Nebuchadnezzar then went on to Jerusalem in his first expedition against that city, 605 or 606 BC. Daniel was taken to Babylon at that time. Nebuchadnezzar's second expedition against that city was 598 or 597 BC. Ezekiel was taken in this taken into captivity at this time. Nebuchadnezzar's third and final trip to Jerusalem was in the 9th year of Zedekiah, around 589 BC. Jerusalem was destroyed by fire and left desolate. Only the poor were left. Purposes for writing the book of Daniel. Daniel's personal dedication to God would have been an example to the deportees on how they should live in a heathen society. The book emphasized God's sovereign authority over Gentile nations, how he establishes and deposes kings and empires to serve his purpose. The book gives an example of God's faithfulness to his covenant people and protecting and preserving them, though they were under divine discipline for their disobedience. The book was written to outline graphically the prophetic period known as the times of the Gentiles. Daniel's book also reveals Israel's future deliverance and the blessings she will enjoy at the coming millennial age. The importance of this book. Historically, the book bridges the gap between Israel's historical books and the New Testament. It contains certain events in Israel's history in the 70-year Babylonian captivity, which are recorded nowhere else in Scripture except for snatches of information in Ezekiel. Daniel outlines the history of the times of the Gentiles and describes past and future empires that occupy Palestine and rule over Israel until the Messiah returns. The prophecies in the book concerning God's program for the Gentiles, for the land of Palestine, and for the people of Israel lay the foundation for his eschatological program. Some of the themes introduced in the book of Daniel, with its emphasis on the Gentiles, are paralleled in the book of Zechariah and come to their ultimate culmination in the book of Revelation. To understand fully the culmination of God's program revealed to the Apostle John in Revelation, it is necessary to understand the inception of his program revealed to Daniel. And this is the last slide of this that we'll have in this lecture, and it's the outline, a concise one of the book of Daniel. Let's look at it. We see the personal history of Daniel in chapter 1. Then we see a prophetic history of the Gentiles during the times of the Gentiles in chapters 2 through 7. And then thirdly, we see a prophetic history of Israel during the times of the Gentiles in chapters 8 through 12. And that will conclude our first lecture in this course.